government should give the people a constitution.
The constitution that ushered Zambia into independence was flawed, as it had many weaknesses.
The constitution that ushered the independence of Zambia was negotiated by politicians and the colonialists at Lancaster House in London. The lack of separation of powers between the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. There's no separation.
Our current Bill of Rights is not adequate to take care of all our human rights questions.
Several attempts were made to come up with a new constitution that would meet the aspirations of the people.
Everybody, when they're out of power, when they're in opposition, they believe and trust that the constitution is flawed. But once they get into power, then it becomes a very powerful tool of entrenching their power.
All along, it has been piecemeal. They go and change what they want. And that's why these processes have been failing.
I believe that a constitution is made by people, for the people. Therefore, if we're going to have rules and laws and regulations and systems to govern ourselves, we ourselves should participate as much as possible in putting together those rules.
The need for a new people-driven constitution became a political agenda. Among those who promised a new constitution when elected into office was Michael Sata. Upon assuming office, Michael Sata appointed the Technical Committee on drafting the Zambian Constitution in November 2011.
We all were very confident that this time, this government means what it's going to do. And who could doubt that? It was in their own manifesto. When they didn't have the power, it was in their own manifesto.
After the consultations, people were now anxiously waiting to see the first draft that would reflect their submissions. Then the delays began.
Very quickly we also realized that once the 90 days had elapsed, the PF began dragging their feet.
After the validation, it was noted that the first draft, by and large, reflected the aspirations of the people. Then began the long wait for the second draft.
There were stories. The technical committee said no, they were not ready, they need enough time. After much pressure, it was said the constitution was lost.
Who had it? So now the fight took a turn.
The Grand Coalition became a force to reckon with as the stakeholders began to speak with one voice as a well-led, well-coordinated and structured group of advocates pushing for the release of the final draft constitution. The power of the Grand Coalition's united and coordinated approach began to bear fruit. The Grand Coalition's campaign created a loud noise that irked the powers that be and stimulated reactions.
We were stopped from having public meetings, assemblies, were accused that we are being funded by foreign individuals.
I experienced some intimidations. I received a number of intimidating, phone calls, including from the highest offices in the land. It was terrifying.
They sent cadres to beat us from within the church, okay, at Bigoka in Matero, okay. They came with pangas, whips, and everything.
We only saw the final draft in October towards the independence celebration last year. And that was also after pressure.
And the coalition was happy with it as it met more than 80% of the basic minimums. A few days after the release of the draft, then President Michael Sata died on the 28th of October 2014. The concern of the Grand Coalition at this point was that once the country went into election mode, the constitution would be forgotten. The Grand Coalition undertook to put the constitution on the presidential by-election agenda. The Grand Coalition implemented the No Constitution, No Vote, where they demanded a roadmap from all the presidential candidates. The two leading contenders released the roadmaps. Feeling the heat from the Grand Coalition's push, President Edgar Lungu, at his inauguration, promised to speedily facilitate adoption and enactment of the Constitution. The Grand Coalition conducted a campaign for the national referendum as the only credible way for adopting the final draft Constitution.
Again, because of the resistance from the GC, eventually we heard, no, what we'll do is we'll just pull out the Bill of Rights and take the rest to Parliament, because the Bill of Rights by law requires a referendum. Perfectly understandable, we don't disagree with that.
The Grand Coalition continued its campaign, targeting members of Parliament to appeal to their conscience, to not butcher the interests of the people.
It went to Parliament, most of us protested, we said don't want this, we want a wholesome adaptation so that we give unto ourselves once and for all a new people-driven constitution.
The constitution amendments that were tabled in Parliament addressed some of the Grand Coalition's demands.
50+1, the running mate, the date of the elections, and dual citizenship.
We are happy 50 plus has gone through. We are happy we are running mate, even though we have question marks on it.
But some progressive clauses had been shot down.
The mixed member representation, they threw it out. For us, that's a big setback. Devolution of power, the provincial assemblies would have ensured that the different regions have power to make decisions for their own. That was thrown out.
The Grand Coalition will push for the Bill of Rights as drafted by the people to be adopted and enacted. The Grand Coalition's journey is one of bravery and passion. A desire to see the people of Zambia's aspiration in a representative democracy fulfilled. It is a tale of men and women who have decided to put their differences aside and work together for a common goal and outcome. The Grand Coalition remains alive.